In the mist-shrouded hills of Yorkshire, where old traditions still cling to the shadowed moors, an air lies struck by strange affliction. When Detective Nathaniel Milbane and his companions arrive at Baildon Manor to investigate a mysterious illness, they find a household divided between science and superstition. This is Victorian Cthulhu, Season 2, Episode 1, The Curse of the Coven. The September afternoon cast golden light through the tall windows of Nathaniel Milbane's Bloomsbury lodgings. The sitting room bore the comfortable order of well-worn routine, each book and paper in its accustomed place. Nathaniel sat reading the morning papers while Will Chester stood by the window, watching the street below with anticipation. "There, I see them," Will announced excitedly as a hansom cab drew up outside. "They're here!" Nathaniel set aside his paper and rose as footsteps echoed up the stairs. The door burst open as Victoria swept in with her typical directness, Isabel following more gracefully behind. "Uncle Nate!" Victoria exclaimed, crossing to embrace him warmly. "You look well. It's so good to see you." "Miss Pemberton," Nathaniel replied formally, though his eyes crinkled with warmth. "Miss Strathmore, welcome home." Isabel entered more quietly, looking considerably better than when she'd left for America 6 weeks prior. "Mr. Milbane, it's wonderful to be back." "Ladies, London's been so dreadfully quiet without you," Will interjected, practically bouncing with anticipation. "Not a single unusual incident. And Nathaniel and the Professor just spent their time doing research." "Well, I have something that might make things a little more interesting," Victoria said, her eyes sparkling as she opened her travelling case. Will's face lit up as Victoria produced a leather case bearing the Eastman Company mark. "Is that?" "Your Kodak camera, as requested, straight from Rochester, New York." Will reverently opened the case, revealing the box camera within. "Oh, this is magnificent. Look at the craftsmanship." He lifted it, examining every angle. "I can't wait to experiment with the exposure times. Think of what this means for documenting our investigations." After the excitement of their greetings were complete, Isabel brought up another matter, her expression troubled. "I'm afraid I have rather unexpected news. I'd barely been home a day when this arrived from Yorkshire." She handed the letter to Nathaniel, who read it with professional attention. "It's from my father," Isabel explained. "Lord Strathmore, requesting my immediate return. He says Tristan, my younger brother, is gravely ill and requires my particular assistance." "Your father?" Victoria's surprise was evident. "But doesn't he disapprove of your interests?" "Completely. He's always called them misguided pursuits and wanted nothing to do with such matters." Isabel's voice carried notes of confusion. "For him to write to me about this, he says he has reason to believe Tristan's illness has a supernatural cause and requires my particular expertise. Though I suspect Father doesn't truly understand what I do, he seems to think anyone who deals with the unexplainable can solve any mysterious problem." "Why is he so certain this has a supernatural cause?" Nathaniel asked. "He doesn't say specifically," Isabel replied, "but knowing Father, for him to even consider such a possibility, let alone write to me about it. Whatever he's witnessed must be quite persuasive. He's always been such a skeptic." Nathaniel finished reading. "When did this arrive?" "2 days ago. Tristan often gets into scrapes, but I have never known him to be ill. He's a bit of a handful, but Father adores him." A trace of old hurt coloured her words. "I can't refuse to help, yet after recent events." "You're not considering going alone?" Will asked, setting down his camera. Isabel looked at him with surprise. "You'd come with me?" "Of course," Nathaniel stated firmly. "If there's genuine supernatural activity, we should investigate. It could indicate another artifact's presence." "Isabel, we're hardly going to let you face this alone," Victoria said decisively. "Besides, you've shown me some of your country. Now let's explore some of yours." "And I can bring the camera," Will added. "If we encounter genuine phenomena, we'll finally have photographic evidence." Isabel's gratitude was evident, though contained. "Thank you, all of you." She hesitated. Father writes that it began 3 weeks ago. Tristan collapsed suddenly and hasn't left his bed since. He's conscious but weak, with symptoms the doctor can't explain. The servants are becoming frightened. One has already left. I was thinking of leaving on Thursday. Would that give us enough time to prepare for a trip? I'll inform Professor Blackwood of our plans, Will offered. He should know where we're going. And I'll gather my investigation materials, Victoria added. My notebook's nearly full from America. I'll need fresh ones. As they made their preparations, Nathaniel caught Isabel's arm gently. Miss Strathmore, are you certain you're prepared for this? I know your family situation is complicated. Isabel's chin lifted slightly. I've faced worse than my father's disapproval, Mr. Milbane. Besides, I won't be alone. As the afternoon waned, the 4 investigators finalized their plans. Thursday would see them venturing into Yorkshire, into the unknown of both supernatural threat and family tension. They agreed to meet Thursday morning at King's Cross Station. As they dispersed, each carried their own thoughts about what lay ahead. Isabel to prepare for reunion with a father who'd rejected her interests, Victoria to arm herself with investigative tools, Will to master his camera's operations, and Nathaniel to consider what might make Lord Strathmore desperate enough to summon the daughter he'd pushed away. The train to Leeds departed King's Cross precisely at 9 o'clock Thursday morning, steam billowing across the platform as the 4 investigators settled into their first-class compartment. The rhythmic clatter of wheels on rails soon established itself as they left London's sprawl behind. Could you tell us a little more of your family, Isabel? Victoria asked as she pulled out a pencil and her leather-bound notebook, the scent of fresh paper mingling with the coal smoke that occasionally drifted through the compartment. Father owned several textile mills near Leeds, Isabel said softly as the countryside rolled past, her gaze distant as though seeing beyond the hills. The Strathmore fortune comes from wool, though he prefers to emphasize the estate's agricultural heritage. A practical man, then, Nathaniel observed. Exceedingly so, which makes his current situation all the more peculiar. Isabel adjusted her gloves nervously. He's taken a new companion. I know only that she is called Mrs. Edith Crowther, his second since Mother died. Victoria closed her notebook as she caught the slight tension in her friend's voice. When did your mother pass? 12 years ago. Father waited a respectable period before seeking companionship, but neither arrangement has led to marriage. Isabel gazed out the window at the passing landscape. Mrs. Crowther has been with him less than a year. I've yet to meet her. The journey passed swiftly, with a change at Leeds, and by mid-afternoon they were arriving at Baildon Station. At the small station, a well-maintained brougham waited, its driver touching his cap as they approached. Miss Isabel! The man's weathered face broke into a genuine smile. By, it is grand to see you back, miss. Sam, Isabel replied warmly. How are you, and how is everyone at the manor? Sam Lister loaded their luggage with practised efficiency. Well enough, miss, though the house hasn't been the same lately. Your father, he might seem stern at times, but he's missed you something fierce. I doubt that very much, Isabel murmured. Oh, you'd be surprised, miss. He mentions you more than you'd think. Sam helped the ladies into the carriage. Mrs. Sykes is beside herself with excitement, been planning your favourite dishes since we heard you were coming, and Mr. Frobisher, well, he lowered his voice. He hasn't been himself lately, poor soul. Getting on in years, bit muddled sometimes. Your presence might give him a lift, though. The drive to Baildon Manor took them through quintessentially Yorkshire countryside, rolling hills dotted with sheep, dry stone walls marking ancient boundaries, and the occasional mill chimney in the distance. The manor itself appeared as they crested a rise, a classic 16th century building of local stone, its mullioned windows catching the afternoon sun. Lord Strathmore stood at the entrance, a figure of obvious authority despite his slightly portly frame. His salt and pepper hair was immaculately groomed, matching moustache precisely trimmed. Beside him stood a slim woman in elegant black silk taffeta, her austere expression suggesting someone who rarely smiled. Isabel, Lord Strathmore said, stepping forward. How wonderful. Father, Isabel moved to kiss his cheek, but Nathaniel noticed how the older man stood rather stiff, neither returning nor fully accepting the gesture. "May I present my companions?" Isabel said, recovering smoothly. "Mr. Nathaniel Milbane, Miss Victoria Pemberton, and Mr. William Chester." Lord Strathmore's demeanour shifted immediately upon hearing Nathaniel's name. "Mr. Milbane, Isabel told me you are a detective. Capital. Exactly the sort of practical mind we need." He shook Nathaniel's hand with evident enthusiasm. "Scotland Yard, weren't you?" "Former inspector, yes, Lord Strathmore." "Excellent. And Miss Pemberton, Mr. Chester, welcome to Baildon Manor." His greeting to them was polite but perfunctory, his attention clearly focused on Nathaniel's credentials. "This is Mrs. Crowther," he continued, indicating to the slim, tall lady stood to his side. The woman inclined her head slightly. "Lady Strathmore, Mr. Milbane, Miss Pemberton, Mr. Chester." Her cool voice matched her angular features well. "We should see Tristan immediately," Lord Strathmore said, leading them inside. "He's been asking for you, Isabel." The interior of Baildon Manor was surprisingly lavish. Dark wood panelling gleamed with polish, family portraits in gilt frames lined the walls, and rich Turkish carpets covered the floors. The textile fortune had clearly been well spent on combining old heritage with new wealth. They climbed the main staircase to the family quarters, where Lord Strathmore knocked gently on a door. "Tristan? Isabel's here." The young man, of not yet 20, propped up in bed, bore a clear family resemblance to his sister, the same dark hair and grey eyes, though illness had taken its toll. Despite his condition, he managed a weak smile. "Belle?" he said. "Father actually sent for you?" "How are you feeling?" Isabel asked, sitting beside the bed and taking his hand. "Thoroughly weak and miserable. I dare say I'm weaker than old Frobisher, and would probably wobble as much." His attempt at humour couldn't mask his exhaustion. "Everything tingles and goes strange at the oddest moments." "We'll sort this out," Isabel promised. As they spoke, the door opened, and an elderly butler entered with a tea tray. His movements were careful, perhaps overly so, as though he was concentrating on each action. "It's wonderful to see you again, Lady Strathmore," he said to Isabel. Isabel's eyebrows rose slightly. "Come now, Frobisher, am I too old to be called Miss Isabel? Lady Strathmore sounds very peculiar when you say it." Of course, miss." The butler seemed momentarily confused, then recovered. "Forgive me, shall I prepare the blue guest rooms for your companions?" "That would be perfect," Lord Strathmore agreed. "Isabel, you will have your old room naturally." As Frobisher departed, moving with that same careful deliberation, Lord Strathmore turned to his guests. "You must be tired from your journey. We'll let you settle in, then perhaps we could speak privately, Detective Milbane. I'm eager to discuss the situation in detail." "Of course, Lord Strathmore." Mrs. Crowther, who had remained silent throughout the visit to Tristan, finally spoke. "I'll have tea sent to your rooms. Dinner is at 7. Her tone, while perfectly proper, carried an unmistakable message. She was the lady of the house now, whatever Isabel's birthright might be. The guest rooms were comfortable and well appointed, all located along the same corridor. Isabel's childhood room was in the family wing, where she had always stayed. As Nathaniel unpacked his few belongings, he reflected on the undercurrents he'd already observed. A father desperate enough to summon his estranged daughter, a companion with barely concealed hostility, and a young man suffering from mysterious symptoms. But something else worried him further. It was hard to be sure whether his headache was from the long journey, or if there was a faint humming ringing through his head, a humming he had not encountered since the conclusion at Wapping. After the guests had settled into their rooms, Isabel knocked gently on Nathaniel's door. "Father would like to speak with us in his study, Mr. Milbane." Nathaniel followed her through the manor's richly appointed corridors to a mahogany-panelled study that spoke of business success. Leather-bound ledgers lined one wall, while another displayed maps of Yorkshire marked with what appeared to be mill locations. Lord Strathmore stood by the window, hands clasped behind his back, the late afternoon light casting long shadows across the Persian carpet. "Detective Milbane, Isabel, please sit." He gestured them to chairs before his desk, then poured himself a measure of brandy from a crystal decanter. "Would you care for one, Detective?" Nathaniel nodded, and the older man poured a second glass and settled into his chair, suddenly looking tired. "I suppose I should begin at the beginning. 3 weeks ago, Tristan collapsed during his morning ride. No warning, no prior illness. One moment he was mounting his horse, the next he was on the ground, barely conscious." "Had anything unusual occurred before this collapse?" Nathaniel asked, withdrawing his notebook. "That's just it, yes. That very morning, our scullery maid, Annie Briggs, found a parcel on the doorstep. When she opened it, Lord Strathmore opened his desk drawer and carefully withdrew something wrapped in cloth. He unwrapped it to reveal a crude figure, made of twisted twigs, bound with rough twine. A nail had been driven through its centre, and where the head might be, an acorn was fixed with what appeared to be dried blood. "Fascinating," Isabel said, taking the totem and examining it more carefully, turning it over in her hands to study the construction. "The craftsmanship suggests purpose, not mere superstition." "Annie went quite pale when she saw it," Lord Strathmore continued, "claimed it was witchcraft." Nathaniel frowned. "Witchcraft?" "A popular topic of chatter in the village," Strathmore replied, his tone dismissive yet uneasy. "It's a common belief here that there is a secret coven of local witches. I always thought it was rather childish, until now." Isabel set the totem down carefully on a blotting pad. "It could be witchcraft, Father, though it looks more pagan than occult. Usually such things are quite harmless, meant to frighten rather than harm." "Then why is Tristan so ill?" Lord Strathmore's desperation showed through. "The doctor gave him tonics, said bed rest would sort him out, but he just gets weaker each day." Nathaniel studied the totem carefully. "Sending this in a parcel seems like a warning or a threat. Who might wish to frighten your family, Lord Strathmore?" "No one. We're well regarded in the county. I provide employment for hundreds, support local charities." "When did the parcel arrive exactly?" "The morning Tristan fell ill, according to Annie. She found it when she went to scrub the front steps." "Tell me about Annie Briggs. How long has she been in your service?" "Only about 2 months. We hired her specifically to handle evening duties." "Evening duties?" Lord Strathmore shifted uncomfortably. "Our butler, Frobisher, has been with us 40 years. Recently he requested shorter hours. His age is catching up with him. So we brought in Annie to cover the evenings when he goes home." Nathaniel made careful notes. "Is there anything else unusual you've noticed recently, Lord Strathmore? Even if it seems unrelated or trivial, it all helps build a picture." The older man considered. "Well, I suppose Frobisher has declined rather rapidly over this same period. It seemed to happen overnight. One day he was his usual sharp self, the next he was confused, making small mistakes. I offered him retirement with a generous pension, but he insisted on staying. Said he couldn't abandon the family in our time of need." Isabel frowned. "That does sound like Frobisher. He's devoted to the family." "And this decline began around the time of Tristan's illness?" "Yes, poor fellow. 40 years of perfect service, and now this." Nathaniel set down his pen. "Lord Strathmore, why are you so certain this is supernatural rather than simply medical?" The older man was quiet for a moment, his gaze drifting to a portrait of his late wife above the mantelpiece. "Because nothing else makes sense, Detective. A healthy young man doesn't just collapse and waste away for no reason, and the timing with that thing arriving at our door, what else could it be?" A knock at the door interrupted them. Mrs. Crowther entered, her black silk dress rustling like autumn leaves. "Forgive the interruption, but dinner will be served shortly. Annie is just preparing the table now." "Thank you, Edith." Lord Strathmore's tone was oddly formal with his companion. Mrs. Crowther's austere gaze lingered on Isabel. "I trust your room is satisfactory, Miss Strathmore?" "Perfectly, thank you, Mrs. Crowther." "Good. We wouldn't want you to be uncomfortable during your visit." The slight emphasis on the last word didn't go unnoticed. After she departed, Lord Strathmore sighed. "You must forgive Edith. She's protective of the household's reputation. These supernatural rumours have been difficult for her." "When did Mrs. Crowther come to live at the house?" Nathaniel asked casually. 10 months ago. She's a widow, comes from a good family in Northumberland. She's been a great comfort during this trying time." Isabel stood, smoothing her skirts with deliberate calm. "We should prepare for dinner, Father. Mr. Milbane will want to discuss matters with his colleagues." "Of course. Detective, I'm placing my complete trust in you. Whatever is happening here, I need it stopped before I lose my son." Walking back to the guest quarters, Isabel spoke quietly. "Father's more frightened than I've ever seen him, for him to even consider supernatural causes." "The situation is clearly serious," Nathaniel agreed. "We'll need to investigate thoroughly, speak to the staff, examine the grounds, perhaps visit the village." "Do you think the totem is genuinely connected to Tristan's illness?" "I think, Miss Strathmore, that we must explore every possibility. Sometimes the most obvious answer isn't the correct one." The faint humming in Nathaniel's head persisted, neither stronger nor weaker than before, a constant reminder that something here was not as it seemed. After dinner, a tense affair where Mrs. Crowther's presence seemed to stifle conversation, the investigators gathered briefly in Nathaniel's room. "We need to speak with everyone," Nathaniel said quietly. "Miss Strathmore, perhaps you could engage Mrs. Crowther. Miss Pemberton and I will interview your brother more thoroughly. Will, see what you can learn from the servants." "The gardener, Clem Bibby, was working near the drive that morning," Isabel mentioned. "He might have seen something." They dispersed to their tasks. Nathaniel and Victoria made their way to Tristan's room, where the young man was propped up attempting to read, though the book trembled in his hands. "Mr. Strathmore," Nathaniel began gently, "I know you're unwell, but could you describe exactly how you feel?" Tristan set the book aside with evident relief. "It's the strangest thing. My fingers and toes feel. I don't know, like they're full of pins and needles, but also numb. Sometimes my heart pounds like I've been running, even though I'm lying still." He flexed his fingers experimentally. "And food is just so hard to eat, everything tastes awful, and I just feel sick if I try a proper meal, although Frobisher does make sure I get some of it down." "When did these symptoms begin?" Victoria asked, her notebook ready. "The morning I collapsed. I felt perfectly fine when I woke, then after breakfast I began to feel light-headed." "Had you eaten anything unusual?" "Just my normal breakfast. Though I remember the tea tasted odd, but then everything tastes odd now." Meanwhile, Isabel found Mrs. Crowther in the morning room, embroidering by lamplight. The older woman looked up with barely concealed irritation, her needle poised in mid-air, as if the interruption had frozen the stitch. "Miss Strathmore, I suppose you wish to discuss your brother's condition." "I wish to apologize, actually," Isabel said, taking a seat uninvited. "I know my presence must be difficult. I suppose you think all this supernatural business is nonsense, like my father did." Mrs. Crowther's needle paused. "On the contrary, I think this is all very dangerous, and your father bringing another person into this house who openly dabbles in such matters is remarkably foolish." "Another person?" "You, Miss Strathmore. Your reputation precedes you. A medium, they say, someone who speaks with the dead." Her tone was ice. "As if we didn't have enough troubles without inviting more darkness through our doors." "You believe in such things?" "I believe in being careful. I believe in not meddling with forces beyond our understanding. And I believe," she resumed her stitching with sharp, precise movements, "that some people bring trouble wherever they go." Outside, Will found Clem Bibby in the tool shed, cleaning his spades by lantern light. The gardener was a wiry, middle-aged man with the weathered look of someone who'd spent years outdoors. "Evening, Mr. Bibby. I'm Will Chester, here with Miss Isabel." "Aye, I heard she'd come home. About time, if you ask me." Clem set down his spade. "Family needs to stick together when there's trouble." You were working the morning Tristan fell ill, weren't you? That I was, clearing the front drive of leaves. Terrible windy night before, branches down everywhere. Clem's eyes flicked past Will's shoulder toward the manor, narrowing slightly before settling back on him. Did you see anyone approach the house? Anyone deliver anything? Clem scratched his chin thoughtfully. No one came up the drive, that's certain. I was there from dawn till past noon. Would have seen anyone coming or going. He paused. Though Annie said she found something on the doorstep that morning, don't know how it got there if no one brought it. Strange indeed. What about Mr. Frobisher? Did you see him that day? Poor old Frobisher. Clem shook his head. Getting confused he is. Saw him yesterday evening, heading home after his work. Except he went the wrong way entirely, toward the old servants' quarters instead of the village. Had to call out to him and set him right. He seemed proper bewildered. The old servants' quarters? Aye, where the household staff used to live, years back, all empty now. Everyone lives in the village, but Frobisher kept walking that way like he belonged there. Said something about being tired, needing to rest. I told him his cottage was in the village, and he looked at me like I'd grown a second head. Back in the house, Nathaniel made his way to the kitchen on the pretense of requesting tea. The cook, Mrs. Sykes, a plump woman in her 60s, greeted him warmly, brushing flour from her hands as she stepped away from the table. You must be the detective gentleman. Would you like some cake with your tea? I've just finished tomorrow's baking. That's kind of you. I understand you've been with the family many years? Since before Miss Isabel was born, practically raised both children when her ladyship passed. Her face softened. It's good to have Miss Isabel home, though I wish it were under better circumstances. This must all be very distressing. Oh, it's been terrible, sir. Poor Master Tristan wasting away, and Mr. Frobisher not himself. And those village folk with their talk of witches, it's enough to drive a body to distraction. Have you noticed anything unusual yourself? Mrs. Sykes considered. Well, Annie's been a godsend, taking on the evening work. Though she does keep to herself, barely says 2 words most days. It would be useful if we could talk to her briefly, Nathaniel said in his professional tone. Mrs. Sykes nodded and called the maid in from the laundry room. Annie looked like a startled rabbit as she entered nervously. You don't need to worry, Miss Briggs, Nathaniel said calmly. I just want to check some things. Can you tell me about the parcel, the one you found on the front step? Annie glanced, almost terrified at Mrs. Sykes, who nudged her. Just answer the detective, Annie. It was just there on the step, sir. No name or label, so I took it inside. I thought it would be kitchen supplies, so I checked it, and it had that thing inside. She seemed so nervous as she spoke that she could only look at the ground. I will let you both get back to your duties, Nathaniel said finally. Thank you for your time. After an hour of investigations, the group reconvened in Victoria's room. Mrs. Crowther believes I'm making things worse, Isabel reported. She thinks I'm inviting darkness into the house. Interesting, Nathaniel mused. Clem confirmed no one approached the house that morning, yet Annie found a parcel, and apparently Frobisher's been walking toward the old servants' quarters instead of home. Wait, Victoria interjected. I thought Annie only worked in the evenings, yet she was here to find a parcel in the morning. Yes, that is curious, Nathaniel agreed, making a note. We should clarify her schedule. That matches what Mrs. Sykes said, Victoria added. Annie keeps to herself. Frobisher's confused, though everyone seems genuinely fond of both of them. Will stretched in his chair. This village witch business seems to be common knowledge. Even Clem mentioned it. Tomorrow I'll visit the village, Nathaniel decided. Speak with the postman about this mysterious parcel, for tonight we should all be vigilant. If something supernatural is at work here, it may manifest after dark. The following morning dawned crisp and clear, the Yorkshire countryside bathed in golden September light. Victoria stood at her window, watching mist rise from the valleys below. It's quite something, isn't it? Isabel said from the doorway. I'd forgotten how beautiful it could be. It's magnificent, Victoria agreed. In New York, you can't see horizons like this. Everything's buildings and smoke. Here, you can actually see the shape of the land. They made their way down to breakfast, where Nathaniel was already nursing a cup of tea and studying his notes from the previous day. "Did you sleep well, Uncle Nate?" Victoria asked. "City habits die hard," he admitted. "Too quiet here. I kept waiting for the sound of carriages and street vendors. Give me London's noise any day. At least you know what's making it." Will joined them, carrying his camera carefully. "Would you mind if I take some photographs after breakfast? The light's perfect, and I want to document the manor properly." "Just be discreet around Father," Isabel warned. "He's already on edge." After breakfast, Nathaniel departed for the village to speak with the postman, while Will wandered the grounds with his camera, planning to show it to Tristan later to cheer him up. The young man had managed to dress and make it to the library with Frobisher's help, determined to escape his bed for a few hours. Nathaniel found the village postman, Mr. Henley, at the small postal office. The man was sorting mail with mechanical precision. "Baildon Manor? Oh yes, I know it well. Been delivering there for 15 years. Do you recall delivering a parcel there on the 20th of August, the morning young Mr. Strathmore fell ill?" Henley frowned. "The 20th of August? Let me check my records. We log all parcels." He pulled out a ledger and ran his finger down the entries. "No, sir. No parcels for the manor that entire week. I'd remember anyway. They don't get many parcels, mostly just letters." "You're certain?" "Absolutely. Last parcel for Baildon was a month prior. Books for his lordship from London." Back at the manor, Victoria and Isabel walked the grounds together. Isabel paused by a stone bench overlooking the gardens. "Mother used to sit here," she said quietly. "She'd bring her needlework and watch Tristan and me play. He was such a handful even then, always climbing things he shouldn't, getting into scrapes. It must be difficult being back. It's strange. Part of me still expects to see her in the morning room or hear Father laughing the way he used to." Isabel pulled her shawl closer. "He changed after she died. Became all business and propriety. I think that's why my interests disturbed him so much. Mother would have understood, but Father, he just wanted everything normal and proper." They continued walking, passing Will as he photographed the manor's facade. He was adjusting his camera when suddenly his hands began to shake. "Blast," he muttered, nearly dropping the expensive equipment. "Will?" Victoria noticed his pallor. "Are you all right?" "I'm not sure. My fingers feel odd, tingly." He flexed them experimentally, his expression growing concerned. "And my stomach." Isabel touched his forehead. "You're clammy. We should get you inside." They helped him to the morning room, where Nathaniel had just returned from the village. He took one look at Will's condition, and his expression sharpened. "What's happened?" "I don't know," Will said, his words slightly slurred. "I was fine, then suddenly, everything feels wrong, like my body's full of static electricity." "These symptoms," Nathaniel said slowly, "they're exactly like Tristan's." "But how?" Victoria asked. "Will hasn't been here long enough to—" "Wait." Will's eyes widened in realization. "Today at lunch, I was in Tristan's room, showing him the camera. There was his lunch tray, untouched. I ate some of it. Didn't want to waste good food." Nathaniel's mind raced. "Tristan's food. Who prepares it?" "Mrs. Sykes does the cooking," Isabel said. "But it's the butler who takes it up, who portions everything specifically for Tristan." "And only Tristan's been affected until now," Victoria added, "despite everyone eating from the same kitchen." The implication hung in the air. Whatever was affecting Tristan wasn't a curse, it was in his food, and only one person had exclusive access to it between kitchen and bedroom. "We need to observe carefully," Nathaniel said quietly, "without alerting anyone to our suspicions. Will, you should rest. If this follows Tristan's pattern, you'll recover as long as you don't consume any more." Will nodded weakly. "No more stealing food from sick rooms. I have learnt my lesson." As they helped Will to his room, Nathaniel's mind turned over the facts. The mysterious parcel that no one delivered, Annie somehow being present in the morning when she only worked evenings, Frobisher's confusion, and his solitary access to Tristan's meals. The pieces were there, but the picture they formed still didn't quite make sense. Not yet. That evening, as the sun set behind the Yorkshire hills, casting long shadows across the manor, Nathaniel made a decision. Tomorrow he would watch the butler very carefully indeed. The next day the late afternoon light slanted across the manor grounds as Nathaniel found Victoria in the library making notes from her interviews. "Miss Pemberton, might I ask for your assistance with something?" She looked up, closing her notebook. "Of course, Uncle Nate. What do you need?" "Your observational skills and discretion. Come with me." He led her out through the gardens and along a winding path that skirted the manor's formal grounds. The summer house stood on a small rise, a hexagonal structure with large windows on all sides, painted white but showing signs of weathering. "Are we searching it?" Victoria asked as they approached. "No, we're using it as a vantage point." Nathaniel opened the door, revealing wicker furniture covered in dust sheets. "From here, we can see both the main road and entrance to the manor, as well as the backgrounds leading away." Victoria moved to one of the windows, noting the excellent view. "Why do we need to watch?" "I have a hunch I'd like to test." He settled into position by another window. Frobisher should be finishing his duties soon. They waited in companionable silence for a few moments before Victoria spoke. "You know, Isabel is really grateful that you agreed to come to Yorkshire. I know you're not fond of the countryside." "She needed our help. That was reason enough." "Still, it was good of you." She paused, then added with a slight smile, "Uncle Henry sends his regards, by the way. He suggested you should join me next time I visit America. He's quite taken with the idea of showing you New York." Nathaniel chuckled. "Henry Pemberton touring me around Manhattan? That would be something, though I suspect he'd try to recruit me for some American venture within the first hour." "Within the first 10 minutes, more likely. He's already mentioned something about a detective agency he's considering investing in." Victoria's tone was fond. "Actually, Henry is thinking of leaving New York for somewhere quieter. He was talking about finding a smaller town." Henry Pemberton in a small town, that's difficult to imagine. "It was wonderful seeing family again, but I found myself missing our investigations. America seemed rather tame after cosmic entities and ancient artifacts. I wouldn't wish those experiences on anyone, yet I understand what you mean. Once you've glimpsed what truly lurks in the shadows, normal life seems—" "There!" Victoria interrupted, pointing. "Frobisher's leaving." They watched the butler exit through the servants' entrance, moving with that same careful deliberation they'd noticed. But instead of heading down the main drive toward the village, he turned and walked across the back fields. "That's the wrong direction entirely," Victoria observed. "The village is that way." "He's heading toward the old servants' cottages, the ones Clem mentioned. Should we follow him?" "Not yet. Let's see what happens." They maintained their watch as Frobisher's figure grew smaller, eventually disappearing among the row of cottages visible in the distance. The buildings looked abandoned even from here. No smoke from chimneys, no washing on lines. "How long do we wait?" Victoria asked after several minutes. "Patience, Miss Pemberton, if my suspicion is correct." He broke off as another figure appeared, coming from the same direction Frobisher had gone. Even at this distance they could identify Annie Briggs by her distinctive quick stride and dark dress. "Annie?" Victoria turned to Nathaniel in confusion. "But there are no homes in that direction. She should be coming from the village." "Exactly." Nathaniel stood. "Now we need to investigate those cottages." They made their way down from the summer house and across the fields, following the same path Frobisher had taken. The servants' cottages stood in a row, 6 small dwellings of the same stone as the manor, built for a time when live-in staff was more common. The cottages appeared dark and deserted, windows blank, small gardens overgrown with weeds. Victoria and Nathaniel moved quietly along the row, checking each one. "This one," Victoria whispered, indicating the fourth cottage. "The curtains are open and look, the dust on the windowsill has been disturbed." Peering through the window, they could make out signs of recent occupation, a chair pulled out from the table, what might have been fresh ashes in the fireplace. "Someone's been staying here," Victoria said. "Should we try to get in?" "We're already trespassing on Lord Strathmore's property technically, though I doubt he'd object given the circumstances." Victoria was already testing the window. It's unlocked, rather careless for someone hiding. She pushed it open before Nathaniel could voice further concerns, climbing through with practiced ease. "Miss Pemberton, we should. Uncle Nate, you need to see this." Her tone made him follow immediately. Inside, the cottage was dim, dust motes dancing in the light from the window. Victoria stood frozen by an inner doorway. Nathaniel joined her and understood her shock immediately. In the small bedroom beyond lay a body on the narrow bed. Even from the doorway, it was clearly long dead. The skin had a waxy, preserved quality, and the smell, while not overwhelming, spoke of death that had occurred weeks ago. But the clothes were unmistakable. The formal black suit, the silver watch chain, even the particular way the hair was combed. This was Mr. Frobisher. "That's impossible," Victoria breathed. "We just saw him walk here." Nathaniel moved closer, examining the body with professional detachment. "This man's been dead at least a month, possibly longer. The cool, dry conditions preserved him somewhat." "But we've been talking to Frobisher. He served us dinner last night." "We've been talking to someone," Nathaniel corrected grimly. "But who and how?" Victoria's mind raced. Could he have a twin brother? Someone impersonating him? Possible, though it doesn't explain the perfect mimicry of his mannerisms, his knowledge of the household. Then what? Some sort of elaborate disguise? "Or something more supernatural," Nathaniel said quietly. "We've encountered artifacts with strange powers. Could this be another? Or perhaps the witchcraft Lord Strathmore mentioned isn't as fanciful as we thought. But why would Annie Briggs be involved? She and Frobisher, or whoever's impersonating him, are clearly working together." "That's what we need to determine." Nathaniel moved to the window, checking the sight lines. "We need to return to the manor immediately. We can't let on what we've discovered. Not yet." "Whoever's doing this has been poisoning Tristan," Victoria said. "Will too now." "Yes, and they've been very careful about it. The question is why, and what they ultimately want." They climbed back out the window, Victoria pulling it closed behind them. As they hurried back across the fields, the manor ahead looked different somehow, no longer just a house with a mysterious illness, but a stage where someone had been performing an elaborate and deadly deception. "We need to warn the others," Victoria said. "I think I have enough information now to wrap this up," Nathaniel replied thoughtfully. "I'll think on it this evening. We just have to make sure Tristan doesn't eat any more of the food he's served." The following morning, Nathaniel found Isabel in the breakfast room, picking at her food with little appetite. "Miss Strathmore, I've arranged to meet with your father in an hour. Could you help gather everyone? Find Mrs. Crowther and your brother, if he's well enough. I'll collect the others." Isabel set down her fork. "Have you solved it? My brother's curse?" "I don't know everything," Nathaniel admitted, "but I know enough." An hour later, they assembled in Lord Strathmore's large study. The morning light streamed through tall windows as everyone found their seats. Lord Strathmore behind his desk, Mrs. Crowther in a high-backed chair, Isabel near her father, Victoria and Will on the settee. Tristan had been too weak to join them. "Perhaps we should have some tea while we get settled," Nathaniel suggested, standing near the fireplace. "Mrs. Crowther, would you have Frobisher bring it in?" Mrs. Crowther looked surprised and disapproving at such a direct request. She pursed her lips but rang the bell, requesting tea from the butler specifically. Frobisher arrived within minutes, moving with his now familiar, careful gait, slightly stooped as though his joints troubled him. He poured tea for everyone with practiced efficiency, the china clinking softly. "Thank you, Frobisher," Lord Strathmore said. "You may go." "Actually," Nathaniel interjected, "I'd like him to stay. This concerns the entire household." Frobisher paused by the door, looking uncertain. "Sir, I really should." "Please, I insist." The butler reluctantly returned to stand near the wall as Nathaniel began. "Lord Strathmore, you asked me to investigate your son's mysterious illness. I can now report that Tristan is not cursed." Nathaniel produced the crude totem from his pocket. "This was meant to frighten, to misdirect. The real cause is far more mundane. Poison." "Poison?" Lord Strathmore's face darkened. "Who would dare?" "Aconitine, specifically," Nathaniel continued. "From Monkshood. Mrs. Crowther, you have such plants in your gardens, do you not?" "We do," she confirmed slowly, "in the far border, but they're ornamental. Yet deadly if prepared correctly. The symptoms match perfectly. Numbness, tingling, heart palpitations, difficulty eating. Both Tristan and Mr. Chester experienced them after consuming food that passed through very specific hands." Nathaniel turned to face the butler directly. "Mr. Frobisher, you alone take Tristan's meals from the kitchen to his room. You portion everything specifically for him." "This is outrageous," Frobisher protested, his voice stronger than usual. "I've served this family faithfully for 40 years. I would never—" "Yesterday, with Lord Strathmore's permission, I searched your quarters." Nathaniel produced a small glass bottle containing white powder. "I found this hidden in your room." That's medicinal powder, for my joints. The village apothecary." "Then you won't mind adding some to your tea and drinking it?" Nathaniel held out the bottle. The room fell silent, everyone watching as Frobisher stared at the offered poison. "Go on," Nathaniel pressed, "if it's merely medicine." The change was instantaneous. Frobisher's stooped posture straightened, his eyes sharpened from confused to calculating, and when he moved, it was with sudden, shocking speed. He lunged for the study door, but Will was ready. The younger man intercepted him, grabbing Frobisher's arm and spinning him back into the room. They grappled, Will using his strength to pin the older man's arms. "Let me go!" Frobisher snarled, struggling violently. Then something impossible happened. Frobisher's form seemed to shimmer and shift, the outline of his figure rippling like heat haze. Will felt the muscles beneath his grip twist unnaturally, bones seeming to flex where no joint should exist. The skin took on a waxy, liquid sheen as features blurred and rearranged themselves, the deep voice warping to a higher pitch mid-protest. Within seconds, it wasn't Frobisher that Will held, but Annie Briggs, drowning in the butler's ill-fitting clothes, her face set in a fierce, almost triumphant glare. Lord Strathmore shot to his feet. "Good God!" Annie laughed, a harsh sound. "This is only the beginning, Lord Strathmore. You should be very worried about what's coming." "Who are you working with?" Nathaniel demanded. "What do you want?" "I'll not be telling you that," she twisted in Will's grip. "But there are others. The Coven has goals you can't even imagine. This was just a warning." "It's over for you," Nathaniel said firmly. "We have enough evidence for the authorities. Lord Strathmore, perhaps you should telephone the police." As Lord Strathmore moved toward his desk, Annie made her move. She wrenched one arm free and grabbed the poison bottle from where Nathaniel had set it down. In one motion, she smashed it against the desk, sending a cloud of white powder into the air. "Cover your faces," Victoria shouted. In the chaos of everyone scrambling back, coughing and covering their mouths, Annie broke free from Will's loosened grip. She darted for the door, yanking it open and slamming it behind her. The click of a key turning echoed through the study. "She's locked us in," Lord Strathmore exclaimed. "The reading room," Isabel called out. "It connects through there." They rushed through the adjoining door into the reading room, then out into the corridor. Ahead, they could hear footsteps clattering down the servants' stairs. Nathaniel reached the kitchen first. Martha Sykes, the cook, stood by the stove looking startled. "She ran straight through," Mrs. Sykes said. "Didn't even stop when I called out." Nathaniel sprinted out the back door into the garden. In the distance he could see Clem and Mrs. Sykes. The cook was helping Clem gather herbs by the kitchen garden. The realization struck him cold. He'd just spoken to Mrs. Sykes in the kitchen, but here she was outside. Annie hadn't run through the kitchen. She'd become Mrs. Sykes, misdirected him, then vanished. He rushed back to the kitchen, but it was empty now. No sign of either Martha Sykes or Annie. She could be anyone, anywhere. They grouped back in the parlour, leaving the air to clear in the study. Lord Strathmore sat heavily in a chair, his face pale with shock. She transformed. Right in front of us, he said weakly. How is that possible? I don't know, Nathaniel admitted, but she's gone, and she can apparently take any form she chooses. We need to warn the staff, search the grounds. She'll have fled by now, Victoria said quietly. If she can look like anyone, she could walk right past us and we'd never know. Isabel moved to her father's side. The important thing is that we know what was happening. Tristan can recover now that the poisoning has stopped. But Frobisher, Lord Strathmore said. If that wasn't Frobisher, then where? Nathaniel exchanged a glance with Victoria. I'm afraid we discovered his body yesterday, my lord. He's been dead for at least a month. Annie, or whoever she really is, has been impersonating him all this time. The full horror of the situation settled over the room. They'd been living with a killer who could wear any face, and she was still out there, having promised this was only the beginning. Later that afternoon, the 4 investigators walked through the manor grounds, the September air crisp and clear. The immediate danger had passed, but questions lingered like morning mist over the Yorkshire hills. I must apologise, Mr. Milbane, Isabel said as they strolled along a path bordered by ancient oaks. This hasn't shown you the best side of Yorkshire. On the contrary, Miss Strathmore, it's been refreshing to work on a case involving actual detection, following clues, interviewing witnesses, solving puzzles. A welcome change from the stranger cases we've encountered in London. At least Tristan will make a full recovery, Victoria added. The doctor confirmed it this morning, didn't he? Yes. Once Father explained about the poison, the police have been informed about poor Frobisher as well. Isabel paused as they approached the row of servants' cottages. How odd. There are people moving about. Indeed, several workmen were visible, carrying furniture and supplies into the long-abandoned dwellings. Ah, Nathaniel said. That would be because of my conversation with your father this morning. Lord Strathmore has asked me to remain in Yorkshire to investigate this Coven matter properly. I agreed, on the condition that I have my own place to work from. And he offered you the cottages? Will asked, brightening. He did. They're being made habitable as we speak. Nathaniel stopped walking, turning to face his companions. But I have another reason for staying. Since arriving at Baildon Manor, I've been experiencing a faint humming in my head, similar to what I felt with the artifact in Wapping, though much milder. Victoria glanced towards him. You think there's another artifact here? I can't be certain. The sensation is different, weaker, less insistent. It might not be an artifact at all, or perhaps artifacts behave differently in different circumstances. But I cannot leave until I know for certain. It does seem an extraordinary coincidence, Isabel mused, to encounter another possible artifact so soon after the last. Indeed, a mystery that demands investigation. Will, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly spoke up. You know what bothers me most about all this? What's that? Victoria asked. When Annie changed from Frobisher back to herself, she was still wearing his clothes. They didn't fit her at all. But when she disguised herself as Martha Sykes in the kitchen, she was wearing Martha's clothes, not her own. How does that work? Can she change clothes, or can't she? The others stared at him for a moment, then Isabel began to laugh. Will, we've just witnessed someone change their entire physical form, and you're concerned about the clothing? It's inconsistent, Will protested, though he was smiling too. These things should have rules. He has a point, though, Nathaniel said thoughtfully. It is strange, another mystery to add to our list. Well then, Victoria said, I suppose we're all staying in Yorkshire for a while. If you'll have us, Nathaniel said to Isabel. Of course. In fact, Isabel glanced back at the manor. I'd prefer to stay with you here rather than at the house. I want to be near Tristan during his recovery, but Mrs. Crowther makes me uncomfortable. There's something about her that doesn't ring true. You suspect her of something? Nathaniel asked. I don't know what exactly, but she's hiding something, I'm certain of it. If I stay with you, we can investigate her more freely. Then it's settled, Will said cheerfully. Nathaniel and I will take one cottage. You ladies can have another. Just like a proper investigation base, Victoria added. Though I must say, Yorkshire is beginning to win me over, even with shape-shifting poisoners and mysterious covens. As the workmen continued their preparations, the 4 investigators stood together, looking out over the grounds of Baildon Manor. They had solved one mystery, but it had only revealed larger questions. A coven with unknown goals, a shape-shifting ability that defied explanation, and now the possibility of another artifact. How long do you think we'll need to stay? Isabel asked. As long as it takes, Nathaniel replied. The coven warned this was just the beginning. We need to discover what they're planning before they strike again. At least we'll be comfortable, Will said, photographing the cottages with his camera. And who knows, perhaps Yorkshire will provide more straightforward mysteries than London. Somehow, Victoria said dryly, I doubt that very much. As the sun began to set behind the hills, casting long shadows across the manor grounds, the investigators made their way back to the house for dinner. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new mysteries to unravel. But for tonight, they had prevented a murder, exposed a killer, and secured a base from which to operate. The coven was still out there, its members hidden among the local population. Mrs. Crowther's secrets remained unexplored. And somewhere, perhaps, an artifact hummed with power, waiting to be discovered. Their Yorkshire investigation had only just begun. As summer draws to a close across the Yorkshire fields, our investigators find themselves chilled by more than just the autumn air. A shapeshifter walks among them, a coven's warning echoes through the halls, and beneath it all lies a mystery that connects to something far older than the hills themselves. What ancient power stirs beneath Baildon Manor, and can our heroes protect Lord Strathmore's household from what lurks in the shadows? If you enjoyed this chilling tale, please give it a like. Likes, subscribes and comments will really help the channel and allow other lovers of dark mystery to find us in the fog. Until next time, stay safe and trust no face you see twice.